Our first panel of the day, Different Industries, Same Challenges, will focus on the collaborative solutions being developed by companies across industries as they work together to reach their sustainability goals. Please welcome Chris Clark, Brian Batson, Harmony Foster, Morgan Gressens, and Joe Rosa to the stage.
All right, good morning again. Did you network with each other?
Yes, sir.
That's pretty pitiful. Did you network?
Yes.
Great. You'll have another chance in about an hour and a half. Listen, we wanted to start this conversation off today with literally hearing from different industry sectors, right? Because everybody's facing the challenges in different ways, lots of different sectors. So the first panel up here, I think we've got a pretty good job of expanding the network here. We've got Brian Batson, who's Executive Vice President of External Affairs and Chief External Public Affairs Officer with Southern Company Gas. So I got my infrastructure guy down there on the end. Harmony is the Director of, Foster is the Director of Sustainability with UPS, so global logistics company. Morgan Gressens is the Vice President of Marketing and Consumer Experience with our friends at Textron, which I referenced earlier. Huge manufacturing conglomerate. We're so proud to have them here in Georgia. And Joe Rosa, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer of Ryan Companies, which is a real estate investment and development company. So we've got a little bit of everybody out there. And so hopefully you'll learn a little bit. But guys, thank you for being with us this morning. We appreciate it. So Brian, I think when I introduced the other three, everybody's like, yeah, it makes sense. But then the gas guy at the end of the road down there, right? So I want to start with you. Fossil fuels, natural gas, you guys are in every type of infrastructure all over the country. Tell me what this means to your company and what you guys are doing.
Good to be here. Yeah, I started with Atlanta Gas Light in 1984, and it was just Atlanta Gas Light. So about 40 years in the industry, and have enjoyed every minute of it. Natural gas, we're a foundational fuel to America and to the world. And for the world and America to sort of reach its net zero goals, natural gas is going to play a part. We can debate and think and believe, but facts, and we'll deal with those. I'm not here to agitate, but I am here to educate. So we're going to talk a little bit about facts and how we'll get there together. But as part of Southern Company, we have a net zero commitment by 2050. We have 4 natural gas utilities, of course, Atlanta Gas Light being one of those. Also, there's one in Illinois named Nicor. There's Virginia Natural Gas and Chattanooga Natural Gas. So we're a holding company within Southern Company, which is a holding company, and we hold the gas units. And so that's how we sort of operate what we do, but we're committed to it. You know, we're very, very reliable as a fuel, and that's very, very important both for renewable fuels to be able to expand and grow. And we're also very affordable, and it's important for our customers across our footprints to be able to afford the energy that they need. And, you know, a combination home of natural gas and electricity is about $1,000 a year cheaper to operate, and that makes a difference to a household.
Right. So one of the things that has been a big push for you guys have been the alternative fuels. I'm curious, Harmony, any natural gas powered UPS trucks?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Got that going. So global footprint, logistics company, proud to have you headquartered in Georgia. I remember, Harmony, reading 10 years ago an article about how UPS was looking at sustainability, being better stewards. And it wasn't, you guys weren't talking about these big macro goals then. You were literally talking about on the ground, little things that you're doing. Like the article I remember talked about how you were trying to get more of your trucks to do right-hand turns because it was more fuel efficient. I mean, little important things that add up. So tell us a little bit about what this looks like today with UPS when you talk about all of sustainability and just, I mean, you've got airplanes, I mean, you've got the whole thing. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of levers. I mean, what you're mentioning there is probably our tool Orion, right? Where, you know, efficiency is really key, and we're a company of engineers, so that's really important to us, right? So that tool is a navigation tool, and it really helps our drivers make sure they're taking the most efficient route and saving lots of miles. So that's one aspect, but then, of course, the renewable natural gas is a big component. One of the big levers for us, we're one of the biggest purchasers of renewable natural gas in this transportation industry. So we've got, I think, over 13,000 natural gas vehicles. Wow. So it is absolutely a lever for us to reach our 2050 carbon neutral goal. Electrification certainly is as well. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. But renewable natural gas is really the bridge that's going to help us get there in the meantime, while some of the other spaces and kind of the technology is growing in those areas.
Right. And we'll come back and talk a little bit more in a few minutes with you about some of the reporting and how you do some of that. But Morgan, I bragged about Textron because I got in trouble, right? I was bragging about Rivian and Hyundai and Georgia being the buckle of the Bible Belt, and one of your executives pulled me over afterwards and said, dude, we've been doing that for 50 years. Give me a break. This is old hat. So you guys have been in this space. I mean, you've been thinking from a manufacturing standpoint, so very different than the other panelists. Tell us about how you kind of got started and where you guys are today with sustainability.
Sure. So we're really investing in sustainability across the board. We absolutely produce electric products, which is very important, but even more so is kind of how our products go through their full life cycle. So we're really taking a full cradle to grave approach with our electric vehicles. We want to know that the materials we use in our products are sourced sustainably and responsibly. We also want to make sure that we're providing our customers with information around how to recycle or dispose of those products when they're at the end of their life cycle. We've been making golf cars in Augusta, Georgia for a very long time, and electric golf cars. Our latest investment is really in perfecting that battery technology with a great lithium supplier who we partner with, Samsung.
But Textron's not just the golf cart. Tell us a little bit some of the other products that you guys have.
Yeah, absolutely. So we make golf cars, we make utility vehicles, we make turf care equipment for municipalities, sports fields, golf courses. We make ground support equipment, baggage tractors, cargo, belt loaders for airplanes, which are all electrifying now. We also make power sports products, which we're slowly getting into the electric space there. And then, Textron-wide, of course, a huge corporation, private jets, helicopters, military equipment. Textron likes to say, TSV, our division, is sort of the sustainability story for all of Textron. And so just across the board, a lot of great initiatives happening company-wide.
Well, I appreciate that. And we live in Peachtree City, which is home of the golf cart, and we do have our Easy Go. So just so you know, I'm doing my part for the company. Wow, that's all it took. Thank you very much. Sorry, Joe, completely different what you guys are doing. I don't think when we think about development companies that we think about decarbonization, we don't think about the footprints. Talk about how this works out in real estate holdings and how you guys are approaching it.
I think people need to understand, if they don't already know, that 40% of the world greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings. It is a very big number. About two-thirds or three-quarters of that comes from the operations of the building, and the other piece comes from the embodied carbon in the materials of construction. So it is a significant contributor. So for us, we're real estate development, design, construction. We manage about 20 million square feet of real estate, and we have a capital markets practice for sourcing debt and equity. And we do that in kind of sectors that are core to the American economy. We do that in industrial, manufacturing, e-commerce, logistics, advanced food and beverage, and different kinds of industrial, medical office buildings, multifamily, senior living. So I go through that because we're doing a great spread of different product types. But we have a unique advantage because we can look at sustainability. Well, let me just back up. If you look at the clients and the business partners in those verticals, I would surmise, and we've done the analytics, probably 50+% of them right now have either net zero carbon commitments or significant 50% by 2030 carbon commitments. So how can we retool and build our business so that we can turnkey real estate solutions that will meet their sustainability goals going forward? And with that sort of from development all the way through to real estate management and capital markets, we're really focused on bringing in discounted debt and equity and bringing in partners that want sustainability performance, and we can improve the economics of those, not have sustainability be something that costs. It actually can be cheaper to build a more sustainable building. So we see a major opportunity in the market and with the built environment.
I'm curious, I mean, you're focused on a lot of different sectors there. But obviously the housing sector is something we spend a lot of time talking about too. Do you see the housing development sector thinking the same way that you guys are thinking about long-term sustainability and better practices?
It depends, okay? But we are seeing some of the buyers of these assets with significant ESG goals. So ultimately, you know, you're building with equity partners on the front end, but then you're going to sell it to somebody on the back end. So what we have to do is we have to carry forward an idea of who we're going to sell the asset to. And in multifamily, for example, we need to look at how we can plus up the sustainability performance in that product in ways that the tenants fully appreciate. So in attainable or affordable housing, it has a different kind of look. In more premium space, which we focus on, we need to make sure that there's an immersive tenant experience around it so they understand that they're living in a super sustainable space. And that opens up the opportunity to put a minor premium in there for that. So you get discounted capital, you get some better operating expense, you get a better economic asset that somebody wants to buy. And you can see that whole value chain moves forward.
Okay. That's great. Thank y'all for getting us started there. Harmony, I want to come back to you. This area of sustainability has changed a lot in the last 10 years. It's probably changed a lot in the last 60 days from the politics of it. I'm curious from a reporting standpoint, kind of what do you see and how are you adapting as the market evolves, as the politics evolve? How does that change what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'll just use an example. Anyone that is kind of a larger company that has to report annually on sustainability may be aware the SEC, Security and Exchange Commission, they had a proposal that came out last year that would require companies to start reporting their climate information, their emissions on their financial statements, their 10K, right? Which means the audit scrutiny around that data increases significantly, right? So we're thinking that it would be, approved and finalized by the end of last year. It still hasn't been approved, by the way. They're thinking end of this year. But in preparation for that, we put together a cross-functional team and really looked at how can we get all of our data together. And if you think about UPS, been around for over 100 years. We've got data and systems all over the place, like probably most companies. So trying to get all of that together, which, prior to me joining the sustainability team, was a very manual process. We're talking Excel spreadsheets, right? So they were pulling that all together on an annual basis and spending months doing that. So we created this team and really took a step back and said, let's make sure this data is accurate. Are we getting it from the most accurate source? And the system and validating the information is accurate. So we pulling all that together, kind of did the due diligence to make sure that the data was accurate. And then from there, how do we automate it? How do we take out the manual piece? Because, of course, any manual component, there's potential for error, right? So we implemented a couple software solutions to calculate the emissions systematically and then take that data and send it over to our reporting system. We were already using it for our financial reporting, so we pulled it in for our sustainability information. So when the SEC gets, the proposal gets approved at some point, we'll have all that data in one spot, and we'll be able to pass, between the two areas very easily. But now, because of that, a process that took 5 or 6 months to do, very manual, multiple people, we, can do it in maybe a month, even less than that. So we accelerated the production of our GRI report today, got it out a couple months earlier than the prior year, but more importantly, we just increased our control environment as well. So the data that we have there, we know is accurate. But now the transparency, right? The visibility into that data. So we're talking about goals and how do we, these initiatives that we probably all have, we'll probably get to a little bit later, how do we reach those and then see that what we're doing is actually working? Well, that takes data to show it to you, right? So now we've got the data from annual reporting to monthly reporting so we can see it and say, all right, this initiative that we put in place, is it working? Are we seeing the results as expected? Are we getting closer to our goal, or is it not actualizing as we expected? So the data piece has really evolved. And, I've talked about the SEC, which is the US, but the international market, us being a global company, that piece worries me quite a bit because it's just massive. There's a new CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive in the EU that isn't just focused on the climate piece like the SEC is. It is ESG, so there's components to that, like a double materiality assessment, that we haven't done before. So it's just massive, and then there are country-specific regulations, where we have to start reporting on. So that piece of it is just evolving so quickly, and we're trying to catch up and make sure we've got a good governance model in place. So we're getting there.
I want to come back to that in just a minute because it spurs all kind of questions for me. But Brian, you guys are obviously heavily regulated. You're in multiple states. Talk to us a little bit about how you're reporting and what that looks like as well.
Yeah, be glad to. Let me give you a few figures, and I wrote them down just to make sure I don't mess them up. But I'll try to put things in perspective. For me, that helps me sort of think. If you look at the U.S. is about 15% of the emissions for the world, okay? So we're 15% here within the U.S. Of that 15%, methane, which is what we deliver, is 11% of that. If you go into methane and how methane is broken down, the number one emitter of methane is enteric fermentation. Now, country boy like you, that's called chewing the cud, okay?
Yep.
So cows sit, chew, create methane. That's number one, methane emissions. Number two is natural gas industry. And then you get number three is landfills. We're familiar with what that is. We talked about trying to keep stuff out of landfills. Number four is manure, another cow contribution. So really, number two is number four. Does everybody get that? Okay? You
He's
may
here
not
all day,
remember
ladies and
another
gentlemen.
thing you hear here today. You'll remember that. But I just want you to do it. So in Georgia, because we worked very hard over a long period of time, as you say, we're regulated. The PSC regulates us. We work with them on everything that we do. We've replaced all the bare steel cast iron in the state of Georgia. That's really hard for most. If you're not in our industry, you can't really wrap your head around what that means. But let me just tell you, New York City, no way. Philadelphia, no way. Chicago, no way. There's no large city you can name that has done that. Georgia's already done it. Done it. Put it behind us. We deliver 99% plus of the molecules that come into our pipe and end up at your house. Wow. That's what we measure. That's what we take in and what we put out. When I talked about the sources of methane, I mentioned landfills and I mentioned manure. Great sources of renewable natural gas, right? UPS has got a great program. They're taking diesel trucks off the road, measuring that, buying gas that we kept out of the air. Methane is a larger detrimental effect on the atmosphere, right? And they're burning it in a car. So our system can capture that gas from all over the state, whether you're a farmer or you're a landfill owner, bring it through the system and burn that. And of what we capture, 99+% of it is going to go to the consumer. And so we have to measure and we have to know where we're at because we get measured. And we report that. We report it at PHMSA. We report leaks. We report all these things. But because Georgia's system is so new, it's very, very impressive what we've been able to do. And if you look at another Georgia fact, because I know that's where we sit, and Pedro's watching to be sure I stick to the Georgia facts, we've grown our system by 25% in Georgia from 98 to 2018. So measure that 20 years. We have 25% more system, 60% less methane emissions.
Wow.
Okay? That's in 20 years. So every industry is focused on it. We just need to get perspective. Where do we stand in the world? Where do we stand in the state? What can we each do to achieve where we're going? We're not going to get there in one fell swoop, but if everybody's doing their piece. So it's that measurement that we do, and we have things that, we got all kinds of fancy stuff that rides around at night and looks for gas leaks. And we fix them if we find them. So all those kind of things just are a simulation of making sure what methane we capture, we deliver, and that the consumer is able to use it.
I appreciate that, Brian. Megan, I want to give, if you want to talk about this and how you measure, I'd love to hear that, but I've got another question for you. So you're in the manufacturing space. You've got lots of different manufacturing facilities, lots of different places, an incredible workforce. How do you get your workforce to care about these goals? It's one thing for us to report stuff and get investors, but you're dealing with guys that are out there getting dirty every day, just trying to get it done. What have you done to make them feel part of the solution and make sure this matters?
It's a great question. You know, it sounds a little bit elementary, but we first actually established company-wide goals that we shared with individuals, and we made them really public to our company. And it really starts from the top down. So making sure that at the leadership level that every senior leader on our team is bought into what the goals are has been critically important for us. We have a great sustainability leader, and part of her job then is taking what we're doing from a company standpoint and translating that to all of our employees. And we just talk about it more. So you see sustainable initiatives across all of our facilities in a much more public way. And that could just be more recycling bins. It's putting reusable like trays and plates and silverware in our cafes. It's offering things like e-waste days for our employees, where if you have, old cell phones or old laptops at home and you don't know what to do with them, just, giving employees a resource to actually dispose of that material at work. And so it's just making all the initiatives more public to all of our employees and showing them how they too can have a part in being more sustainable. We have a goal to launch 100 new sustainable initiatives every year, and those are long in the tooth projects and also quick wins that we're constantly trying to achieve and to win. And so we track that, we talk about it, and then we celebrate our successes as well.
So it's not just setting the goal, it's all the way down to the line worker.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. You got a little different structure. I'm curious because you're dealing mainly with subcontractors that could maybe care less about the goals that you're setting. So how do you work with them? Does that change how you pick your subcontractors, the partners that you work with on projects? Are you looking for ones that care, that makes this a priority, or are you just figuring it out as you go?
Well, there's kind of two angles to that, I would say. One is you have to align, and because we do development all the way through to construction, it's a little bit unique. So the process that we have is to align with the partners on the sustainability goals for that specific project before the economics get penciled, or the numbers get finalized. We want to make sure we're really clear on that on the front end. That cascades through design, plans, and specifications, and it rolls all the way down. So we're not really asking them to do, at the site level. It's coming down through the contract documents what needs to happen.
Okay.
That's really important. And what we're doing to enable some of that is with our supplier sustainability program. So what we have taken a very strategic approach to that. We're a $3 to $4 billion a year company, right? And so we've kind of put that on the table, and we're working with national procurement programs with key manufacturers of core materials and equipment into the building. We said, we're going to give you all that business, but we need a lower unit price, and we need more sustainable options in the palette. So now we're able to go in and we have these sustainable things flowing in the specifications that are cheaper and more sustainable for us. I think the third leg of that stool on the contractor question is we've put together some, I'm talking to my peers from the 15 top construction companies in the country. We meet on a routine basis, and we've established a project decarbonization and climate reporting task force with the Associated General Contractors, 27,000 subcontractors and contractors members, creating a standardized playbook that everybody can follow so that everybody knows what they need to be doing. So we're trying to create some standardization in the space.
I'm curious, I don't want to get off track here, but your industry, obviously, every company up here has certain DE&I goals too, because you want to diversify your supplier network. How do you marry those up? How do you make sure that you're still diversifying that supplier network and getting these products that you want?
Well, that's part of the strategic nature of our supplier sustainability program, right? We've all been on the giving and the receiving side of throwing requirements over the transom and getting people to do that. We don't do that at Ryan. What we do is we sit down and we do a strategy gap assessment with them first. And we say, okay, what are you doing in these areas? What are your goals and commitments? And our guiding principle is this needs to be shared value for our suppliers. Like, this has to be a win for you and a win for us. But let's see where we are. This is where Ryan is. This is where you are. Where are the gaps? Where are we aligned? What do we need to be talking about, to improve? So we're not trying to just point at people and say, you got to do better. We're all on a journey together here.
So you're helping them build capacity at the same time, much like many of the companies up here.
And I would add the incentive to that.
Yeah.
The incentive to do that. We feel that a compelling market signal is about the best thing that you can do to motivate people to make positive change. Right. And we're saying, we're going to buy 50,000 countertops next year from you. Can you handle some of these things that we really need you to do? Mm-hmm. And by the way, we're translating that back to our value proposition to our business partners to say, hey, this is what you're, by buying a building from us, this is what you're enabling to happen, and we can roll that up and give it to you, and you can go and report that.
That's fascinating. Harmony, you talked about European Union and having to operate there. Sorry, probably don't want to talk about it. But I'm just curious, I mean, you're operating in a highly competitive global market with very small margins, with rising fuel costs every day, rising inflation on everything that you do, and then the government in Europe is coming over and laying another layer of requirements on top of you. And so how do you manage that without passing that on to every customer? I mean, that's just got to mess up it's another factor that you have to think about as you price what the package I'm sending out tomorrow is going to be, right?
Yep. I mean, I think of what I talked about earlier, being able to improve a process like we did for the reporting that was so manual to now make it more automated when the international environment is now enforcing more reporting requirements. Well, we've put a great solution in place that's more automated. So in theory, I should be able to get my data from this new solution, right? And meet the needs of these other disclosure requirements. It gets complicated when some of them, ask for things like the double materiality assessment that I mentioned before that we just really are not doing, probably no one is really doing. But I think we have to focus on where we can optimize, and it goes back to the efficiency comment before with, our trucks and using tools like that. But even just, we need to focus on our goals and our business. So although most people are obviously familiar with our vehicles that come to your door and deliver packages, but our greatest emitter of greenhouse gas is our airline, right? 68% of our greenhouse gas comes from our jet fuel. So we have a very large airline. People don't, you see I'm sure most of you know, but most people don't realize it, right? So how do we, focus on that in our decarbonization journey? It's difficult. SAF, sustainable aviation fuel, right, is not scalable right now, and it's kind of cost prohibitive, right? It's 2 to 5 times more compared to jet fuel. So that's where I mentioned earlier about the natural gas, kind of using that as a bridge. The technology's here now, let's use that to help us get to our long-term goal, but we know we have to solve for, the airline emissions. So we are, working with our industry partners, joining SABA, Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance, and really helping us to advocate for policy, our PA partners, right? So still doing kind of these small steps, but ultimately we know our long-term goals, and there's going to be regulatory things that come out that put pressure on us, but let's stay focused on our goals. And kind of what you opened up with, like incrementally these smaller components of our business, let's continue to just apply pressure in these areas and get us to our long-term goal. Electrification is another one, right? It's a big one for everybody. For us in our business model, it's, a supply issue still. There's a lot more manufacturers coming out now with electric vehicles, but that's an area that we expect to continue to grow. The infrastructure there is a challenge still, right, with charging infrastructure. So again, renewable natural gas, we'll focus on that, but we are working.
Not paid her a dime.
But continue to make strides in these other areas where maybe supply is a little bit of a challenge.
So we've only got a couple minutes left. This is the Future of Sustainability Summit. And so I want to go down the road here. And Joe, I'll start with you. Look 5-10 years in the future in your industry sector and tell us, drivers, what you see, maybe plant some seeds of wisdom and knowledge out here for folks to be thinking about long term.
I'll be
and then everybody will go down, we'll hit all of you with that same
I'll
question.
be super quick because I think everybody wants to weigh in on that. I think we're paying attention to what I call companies going from zero to zero. They don't have much on sustainability, and they're going net zero. So I think you should look at what your customer, your B2B pipeline looks like. You need to get out ahead of that. You're going to see a lot more of your value chain going net zero carbon, and you need to get out ahead of that because it's going to take you some time to build organizational capability to meet that need and to differentiate yourself in the market. There's an opportunity today, going to be table stakes tomorrow.
You said it, we've all said it, the change is happening so quickly in this space. There's new manufacturers of electric vehicles all the time. There's new solutions out there. There's better ways to do things. So I think for us, we're really just focusing on being comfortable with change and making sure that the organization is aligned and on board with knowing that, what we're doing today is not going to be what we do 2, 3, 4 years from now. We just have to be really comfortable with knowing that we have to keep changing and keep growing and keep evolving.
Great point. I'm with you there. We have to challenge ourselves, right, to continue to change. Specifically for us, I think the technology component is really important in the different spaces. So with, what I talked about with jet fuel and our airline, there's eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, right? That's something we're looking at to potentially help with our small feeder aircraft in our network, right? That's another option as we're kind of waiting for SAF to evolve. But then I think maybe just hydrogen, right? Looking there's just different types of technology coming out that could potentially work in our network, and just being open and willing to adjust and change our business model based on the technology and how it's evolving.
So, Brian, before you jump on that, I'll just say Georgia Tech right now is working on the hydrogen component to be a national fuel or a national development. And then plus, Georgia just recently announced our first electric vertical takeoff manufacturer is now building and should have a product online in 24 months being built over in Covington. So pretty cool. Brian?
A little perspective. So in 1984, when I started with Atlanta Gas Light, I was the young college boy, and the first computer arrived, and it was a floppy disk. Most of you may not know what a floppy disk is. We had a floppy disk. 2 minutes ago, my phone just rang. It told my watch that it was somebody from Claxton, which I now know is trying to sell me Medicare insurance, right? So think about where we are in the education role, right? But within 10 years, Georgia will have built several RNG plants, which will remove methane and put it into the system. Wow. We'll be running off of cleaner atmosphere. You'll have nuclear power generating across the state, pushing the state forward, and we'll be ready for industry, which is coming. And we're prepared, and the infrastructure will be there because our commission thinks about it, our governor thinks about it, and our chamber thinks about it. So we will be ready. And personal challenge, I see Kevin sitting in the room, but if everybody in this room can be net zero on your natural gas bill if you choose it. You find a marketer and you can be net zero. So if you're not committed. That's a personal decision. And we all have to make personal decisions, and we all have to make little changes. So I pay my extra dollars per month, and net zero at my house.
Awesome. I think this is a great start for the conversation today. Thank me for 4 great stewards and great steward companies. Thank y'all for what you do. Appreciate it.